Introduction, Section 4, Part 1. Section the 4th, on the countries subject to the laws of England. The Kingdom of England, over which our municipal laws have jurisdiction, includes not, by the common law, either Wales, Scotland, or Ireland, or any other part of the King's dominions, except the territory of England only. And yet the civil laws and local customs of this territory do now obtain, in part or in all, with more or less restrictions, in these and many other adjacent countries, of which it will be proper first to take a review, before we consider the Kingdom of England itself, the original and proper subject of these laws. Wales had continued independent of England, unconquered and uncultivated, in the primitive pastoral state which Caesar and Tacitus ascribe to Britain in general, for many centuries. Even from the time of the hostile invasions of the Saxons, when the ancient and Christian inhabitants of the island retired to those natural entrenchments for protection from their pagan visitants. But when these invaders themselves were converted to Christianity, and settled into regular and potent governments, this retreat of the ancient Britons grew every day narrower. They were overrun by little and little, gradually driven from one fastness to another, and by repeated losses abridged their own wild independence. Very early in our history we find their princes doing homage to the crown of England, till at length, in the reign of Edward I, who may justly be styled the conqueror of Wales, the line of their ancient princes were abolished, and the King of England's eldest son became, as a matter of course, their titular prince, the territory of Wales being then entirely annexed to the dominion of the crown of England, or, as the statute of Rutland expresses it, terra valie comincolis suis, prius regi jure feudali subjecta, of which homage was the sign, iam in proprietatis dominium totaliter et cum integritate conversa est, et coronae regni Angliae tanquam pas corporis ejusdem annexa et unita. By the statute also of Wales, very material alterations were made in diverse parts of their laws, so as to reduce them nearer to the English standard, especially in the forms of their judicial proceedings. But they still retained very much of their original policy, particularly their rule of inheritance, viz., that their lands were divided equally among all the issue male, and did not descend to the eldest son alone. By other subsequent statutes, their provincial immunities were still further abridged, but the finishing stroke of their independency was given by the Statute 27, Henry VIII, Chapter 26, which, at the same time, gave the utmost advancement to their civil prosperity, by admitting them to a thorough communication of laws with the subjects of England. Thus were this brave people gradually conquered into the enjoyment of true liberty, being insensibly put upon the same footing, and made fellow citizens with their conquerors, a generous method of triumph, which the Republic of Rome practised with great success, till she reduced all Italy to her obedience, by admitting the vanquished states to partake of the Roman privileges. It is enacted by this Statute 27, Henry VIII, 1. That the dominion of Wales shall be for ever united to the Kingdom of England. 2. That all Welshmen born shall have the same liberties as other the King's subjects. 3. The lands in Wales shall be inheritable according to the English tenures and rolls of descent. 4. That the laws of England, and no other, shall be used in Wales, besides many other regulations of the police of this principality. And the statute 34 and 35 Henry VIII, chapter 26, confirms the same, adds further regulations, divides it into 12 shires, and, in short, reduces it into the same order in which it stands at this day, differing from the kingdom of England in only a few particulars, and those too of the nature of privileges, such as having courts within itself, independent of the process of Westminster Hall, and some other immaterial peculiarities, hardly more than are to be found in many counties of England itself. The kingdom of Scotland, notwithstanding the union of the crowns on the accession of their King James VI to that of England, continued an entirely separate and distinct kingdom for above a century, though an union had been long projected, which was judged to be more easy to be done, as both kingdoms were anciently under the same government, and still remained a very great resemblance, though far from an identity, in their laws. By an Act of Parliament 1 James I, chapter 1, it is declared that these two mighty, famous, and ancient kingdoms were formerly one. And Sir Edward Coke observes how marvellous a conformity there was, not only in the religion and language of the two nations, but also in their ancient laws, the descent of the crown, their parliaments, their titles of nobility, their offices of state and of justice, their writs, their customs, and even the language of their laws. Upon which account he supposes the common law of each to have been originally the same, especially as their most ancient and authentic book, called Regiam Majestratem, and containing the rules of their ancient common law, is extremely similar to that of Glanville, which contains the principles of ours, as it stood in the reign of Henry II. And the many diversities subsisting between the two laws at present may be well enough accounted for, from a diversity of practice in two large and uncommunicating jurisdictions, and from the acts of two distinct and independent parliaments, which have in many points altered and abrogated the old common law for both kingdoms. However, Sir Edward Coke and the politicians of that time conceived great difficulties in carrying on the projected union, but these were at length overcome, and the great work was happily effected in 1707. 5. Anne, when 25 articles of union were agreed to by the parliaments of both nations, the purport of the most considerable being as follows: 1. That on the 1st of May 1707, and for ever after, the kingdoms of England and Scotland shall be united into one kingdom, by the name of Great Britain. 2. The succession to the monarchy of Great Britain shall be the same as was before settled with regard to that of England. 3. The united kingdom shall be represented by one parliament. 4. There shall be a communication of all rights and privileges between the subjects of both kingdoms, except where it is otherwise agreed. 9. When England raises £2,000,000 by a land tax, Scotland shall raise £48,000. 16, 17. The standards of the coin, of weights, and of measures shall be reduced to those of England throughout the United Kingdoms. 18. The laws relating to trade, customs, and the excise shall be the same in Scotland as in England, but all the other laws of Scotland shall remain in force, but alterable by the Parliament of Great Britain. Yet with this caution, that laws relating to public policy are alterable at the discretion of the Parliament. Laws relating to private rights are not to be altered but for the evident utility of the people of Scotland.